Beekeepers, it's a gloomy, coolish, midwinter day, overcast, rainy. What a great day to talk about a gloomy, overcast topic. And that would be our emotional responses that we feel when we realize that some of our beehives have American Foulbrood. Jeff Ott's visiting with us today. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jim. Thanks a lot for inviting me along to talk about this happy topic.
I'm glad to have you here. Jeff's from the podcast Beekeeping Today and is a frequent visitor here with us. I appreciate you stopping by to talk about this. The thing I wanted to go into, Jeff, it's not so much punctured cappings and oily cappings and stringy smears. What I wanted to talk about was more what you feel as a beekeeper. I've never heard that discussed, but I see it and have seen it many times. Can we talk about that for a bit?
Yeah, let's talk about that. If you have American Foulbrood, do you tell your friends?
That's a good question. Let's go with that. Hi, I'm Jim too.
I'm Jeff Ott from Beekeeping Today podcast.
And we're coming to you from Honeybee Obscura, the weekly podcast where we talk about all things beekeeping. And today is a cheerful, bright subject of why do you cry when you find out your beehives have American Foulbrood?
You are listening to Honeybee Obscura, brought to you by Growing Planet Media, the folks behind Beekeeping Today podcast. Each week on Honeybee Obscura, hosts Kim Flodham and Jim Tu explore the complexities, the beauty, the fun, and the challenges of managing honeybees in today's world. Get ready for an engaging discussion to delight and inform all beekeepers. If you're a long-timer or just starting out, sit back and enjoy the next several minutes as Kim and Jim explore all things honeybees.
I haven't had to deal with Foulbrood issues in quite a while. And I would knock on wood, I'd knock on anything, but if I keep keeping bees long enough, I'll probably see it again. How often do you see it, Jeff? What has been your latest episode?
I have been fortunate in that I have not seen it since the late 90s or early 2000. I'd say 2000. Mm-hmm.
Well, what I'm talking about, what I want to get to, what I'm struggling with is that you really can't make a slide deck. It's hard to make a video. You have to be there, Jeff. You have to be the beekeeper in the yard, and you're just looking at a frame, and it's capped brood, and there's suddenly an odd tear in a capping. And then as you think, well, that kind of looks like that picture I've seen of American Foulbrood, and then you keep putzing, there's another one. There's this thing you get in the bottom of your stomach, this anxiety. Is this it, or is this the results of Varroa mite predation? Let me stick a stick in that.
Yeah.
And then you put a stick in it, and in all the pictures, it strings out 3/4 of an inch, ideally as long as an inch. It just strings out. I love the word mucilaginously to keep from using the other word.
Is that a real word?
Yeah, I made it up probably. I think it is. And then you thought, well, that just strung out 3/8 of an inch. Is that enough? And then you see there's this anxiety that begins to develop. Do you know the feeling I'm talking about, or am I alone here?
No. I am very well aware of it. And you start looking at the rest of the colony and you start thinking, well, all those things that I was thinking about was just normal ebb and flow in the colony. Maybe this is a sign of a weakening colony that's fighting this disease.
Yep. You try to think of anything else that it could be. Is this a pesticide hit? You just struggle because you really don't want it to be anything bad.
No.
But you certainly don't want it to be American Foulbrood.
You start sniffing. You start saying, do I smell anything? Do I smell anything weird?
Do I smell anything? Is there anything I'm missing here?
Yeah.
So then this is the second stage in many cases, Jeff. You dial up a friend. And let me tell you, listeners, at this point, it needs to be a good friend, because if this thing develops, then you've got a party to your crime here. So you call up a friend, and maybe he or she comes over, and they have a look, and you decide, yep, this is American Foulbrood. Well, you see, then this is where the plot begins to thicken, because you're at a monthly meeting then. And your friend suddenly says, well, Jeff's got American Foulbrood, but we're dealing with it. He's going to scorch his colonies out and put some antibiotic on it. Well, then can you help me, Jeff? The angst begins to grow I'm within the crowd.
Trying to figure out why you chose me as being the one with the American Foulbrood.
Because I didn't want to use my name just in case the listeners thought that somehow this was a recantation of a real story. No, we're making this up. No, but it's the issue. I mean, these are all my thoughts today on this segment. All my feelings are real world, where I have watched beekeepers go through this agony of different stages. Well, he's just 3 miles from me.
Right.
Is that flight distance from his yard to mine?
Well, these are, and we're trying to make light of this difficult subject, but even the thought of bringing this up in a public meeting, such as a monthly beekeeper meeting, is a weighty subject. I mean, do you tell the club that you're presently dealing with American Foulbrood, and everyone's listening to the podcast saying, well, sure you do, dummy, but there's going to be somebody sitting out there saying, no, I'm not going to tell them that my hives have American Foulbrood because I don't want that stigma tied to my bee yard or to me as a beekeeper, because American Foulbrood is seen as, well, you're a sloppy beekeeper then.
That is a perfect word, a stigma. Because what I've seen happen, what I think happens in nearly every case, is that beekeepers have a long memory. So you may burn up everything you own. You may basically nearly put yourself out of business. But then when another beekeeper in that same group comes down with American Foulbrood 2 years later, your episode, your experience will come back to mind. And you'll suddenly be back on the front burner, even though you may not be even in beekeeping anymore. I wonder if his equipment's sitting around down there somewhere. You know, he was the last guy I heard of who had anything. So there's a stigma that's really hard to shake. And when you said, do you tell people at the meeting? Well, I don't know why I would tell anybody. But at the same time, I don't know why I would keep it a secret. I mean, it's my business. If I had European Foulbrood, if I had small hive beetles, same thing. If I'm not treating for Varroa, I'm contaminating the neighborhood too. But American Foulbrood has a hard stigma because of the perseverance of it.
Right now, today's beekeepers are all concerned about overwhelmingly with Varroa and all the Varroa-associated disease. And that's the bugaboo of the beekeeping world right now. But before Varroa, the big monster in the closet was American Foulbrood. And I think that's why that stigma persists today, because it can ravage a bee yard.
Yep.
And that was what was killing bee yards in many cases in a bad way before the Varroa came around. And the reason I think it was seen poorly was you ended up having to kill the colony as the final treatment. I mean, that was the recommended surefire way of mostly getting rid of American Foulbrood, because you never really know, right?
You never really know.
Right.
You keep making all the good points. You never really know, do you, Jeff?
No.
So let's just say I had the bad luck of having American Foulbrood in 2 of my 10 colonies. I destroyed both those colonies, and now it's over.
Is it?
And you can breathe a sigh of relief. And then 2 years later, there's another one. And you think, well, did that come from the one 2 years ago? Or are my bees finding something out in the wild? And then you want to say, well, it's probably a wild nest somewhere. Well, I don't know if it is or not. I mean, wax moths frequently tear that down. So you never really know where it's coming from. I think that what I feel after all these decades is that you just always watch for it. And when it turns up, and it's rare, but when it turns up, you recognize it and you deal with it forcefully, and then you just move on.
Right.
And then if it comes up a year later, I don't know where it came from. I don't know where my last respiratory infection came from. I'll get another one,
Mm-hmm.
Is it related to the last one? Probably not. Maybe so. I don't know. I don't care. I just want to find the routine stuff to treat the respiratory infection that I have.
I think you're right. You're absolutely right. And I mean, we're coming at it from a bunch of different directions, but I think when we look at American Foulbrood, I think the common knowledge is it's in the environment, that it's an opportunistic bacterium, that it rarely takes out a very healthy, strong colony. So it's probably in our colonies right now, but our bees are dealing with it.
Yep.
Would you agree?
Yep, I do agree.
So it takes an opportunity for it to get a foothold and grow inside a colony to get to the point that it becomes the Foulbrood disease that we're aware of that takes out a colony.
What's so dreaded about this whole thing is that it's a spore-forming bacterium, and those spores are remarkably resilient. So as bad as Varroa is, at least you can reuse the equipment, you reuse the comb, and life goes on. But with American Foulbrood, you better be able to recognize that, because if you're making splits or if you're selling equipment, used equipment, then you're spreading that all over. So it's a persistent thing. And this is where another point I wanted to get to. I have had people become belligerent at open forums that they did not want. I'll say Jim too this time, since I said Jeff Ott last time. They did not want Jim Tew coming in my yard with his car because he has American Foulbrood, and I don't know if he has spores on his feet and on his car tires. And I promise I had a beekeeper fire off that one day to another beekeeper. It was actually the inspector, that this guy was scattering Foulbrood all across the country because he was driving the same car to all these locations and walking in the yard.
Yeah.
That's not the way it works, Jeff. It's a very fastidious, well-adapted bacterium. It only takes its small part, but it takes that part vigorously. And then when we put these colonies side by side in a bee yard, drifting bees, robbing bees, it can explode much more than it would in the wild. Jeff, let's take a break and hear from our sponsor, who has bee supplies and disease control materials available.
Hey, has winter's chill and weather forced you inside? Well, did you know that Better Bee offers winter classes you can take from the comfort of your own home? Our classes are taught by Dr. David Peck and Eastern Apicultural Society Master Beekeeper Anne Fry. Our classes range from basic courses on essentials of beekeeping all the way up to specifics on planning for the seasons ahead and for your success. Visit betterbee.com/classes to view all of our upcoming learning opportunities.
So we've rambled around, Jeff, on some of the feelings, the anxiety. The main thing is the uncertainty. We don't know where it came from, and many new beekeepers have never seen it before, and they're always anxious that they're working all around it and don't recognize it. And that is, I hate to say it, but that is a possibility. And all the beekeeper can do, the new beekeeper especially, is look at the pictures, listen to what others have said, be aware that even though Varroa and the common day issues are our big concerns, that what we have to worry with, too, are these rarely occurring diseases like American Foulbrood because of that persistence. So you don't study it night and day. You don't sit up till the wee hours of the morning. You don't watch every video available. All you can do is just watch the broad overview pictures and be looking for those in your bees. And you've already said there may be a mild case there that you never see. It may have been there for 6 months before it really expressed itself. And so you're trying to figure out where it came from just a few days ago. Well, actually, your bees acquired it a half a year ago.
Right.
Everything about this is uncertain, unclear, and unsatisfactory. And it's the thing that beekeepers have to go to. Well, the thing that is always dark humor, can it be light humor? I guess, is that we always see diseased equipment as being old, scruffy, worn out, neglected, abandoned. I got to tell you, listeners, sometimes American Foulbrood occurs in pristine, very new, high-end equipment. And the recommendation is still what, Jeff?
Burn it.
Burn it. It is really brutal.
What's your feeling about scorching it? I mean, there is a school of thought that if you could just take a blowtorch and scorch the inside, you're good to go.
Well, we have scorched. I have scorched. I've seen scorching done. I've done scorching. It's an art form. Do we want to go into that, or we want to say that you scorch out the inside? I didn't use a blowtorch. I've never done that. We used a few ounces of diesel on a stack of equipment, and you get this chimney thing going. It roars like a freight train, and then just as it's really about to set fire to that stack of equipment, you drop a lid on top and snuff it out.
Yeah.
And then what's left is the inside of your beehives have been charred about a 30-seconds of an inch deep. And that is clean equipment, Jeff. There is no American Foulbrood there. But that equipment is also marked for the rest of its existence. So when you're standing at an auction and you're trying to decide how much of this old beekeeper's equipment you want to buy, and you see that half of it's been charred out, you're probably going to be skittish at that moment on.
Yeah. But you're describing of stacking up the bee equipment and making a chimney of the boxes and a little bit of diesel fuel and everything else. I just had this vision of a disaster waiting to happen. I'm glad you did not do that.
Now, that was a recommended procedure now. And I was taught that by a state apiarist here in Ohio years ago. So there was no nonsense. You're not going to fiddle around with the little propane torch. No, we're going to clean this equipment up. So that was one thing that remains is the equipment is if you do decide to reuse it. And now I think honestly that most of the time you would just go ahead and burn it.
Today, if I had American Foulbrood just like I did back in 2000, we'll just say, I would just burn the equipment.
Hey, you kind of set me up now. I didn't mean to go into this, but let's do it. We got a few minutes left. Just burn the equipment. Burn the equipment. We both agree with that, right?
Burn.
Now I've got you set up, Jeff.
And bury it. Yeah. What?
We've got you set up.
Oh, no.
What if the equipment is plastic? Are you going to still burn it? That's an environmental concern at that point when you start torching plastic equipment.
The boxes are plastic?
And the frames.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh.
And there's plastic foundation inserts. Are you still going to smoke the sky burning plastic?
No. Obviously not. I was thinking old school woodenware. But
I was thinking old school woodenware. But I had this happen. We were doing a burn, and we tossed in equipment, and I noticed some of those plastic inserts going, and I began to think, well, this is not a good thing we're doing.
Yeah.
So we shut down for a while and did some background work on that, and that kind of equipment should go in a double bag sack to an approved landfill where it will be buried. Yeah. That has to go to a landfill.
Depending on the number of frames, I'd probably pop the inserts and burn the frames and landfill, double bag the inserts. Yeah, it's a nasty job. And no matter how you have to do it, and if it's plastic, I think the job is even harder.
It's not just American Foulbrood. Cleaning up a winter kill. Cleaning up after bees that had dysentery. There are just no way to get around it, Jeff. There are some jobs in beekeeping that just are not the desirable, coveted assignments that beekeepers want.
Let's not make this darker.
This is one of them. This is just one of the jobs you've just got to get through to get this under control.
Well, and as we started, this is the one that has the negative stigma, if that's the word for the show, associated with it. Nosema, even a European Foulbrood, none of them have the stigma with it that American Foulbrood does. And I think that's a historical weight that's been placed upon it. And let me tell you why. To end this show on a positive note, I think we need to recognize the fact that today's beekeepers have an awareness about disease control and viruses and from the COVID-19 experience over the last several years. So there's more of an awareness and acceptance and understanding of how diseases spread among the population. So I'm hopeful that some beekeepers can use that translation from COVID to American Foulbrood and their ability to talk about it and understand how it's possible to spread. And just a little plug for Beekeeping Today podcast. We recently talked with Dr. Keith Delaplane out of University of Georgia, and he and his lab is working with a local company on developing a vaccine for American Foulbrood. And that is he was saying he thought it might be released in 2023, this year. So I think there are some great things on the horizon for American Foulbrood, but still, even vaccine or no vaccine, you still have to deal with the equipment and you still have to deal with proper management to avoid getting American Foulbrood.
Jeff, along that line, Honeybee Health Coalition has really good information on where we are now with American Foulbrood, recognizing it, understanding it, doing something with it. So all the things we didn't discuss here today are covered correctly in those kind of publications. They're readily available. So,
yeah, my go-to sources first on anything would be the Honeybee Health Coalition and BIP, Bee Informed Partnership, would be my two first stops in researching what to do next if I find any kind of disease or pest or questions about the health of my colonies.
There's no way to put a bright spin on this. It's the responsibility we take on for being the animal husbanders of our colonies, of overseeing these. There's just no way to put a happy spin on this. When it goes wrong, you fix it and you bring it back to its right. And things go wrong.
Yep, they do. And that's part of, like you said, the responsibility we accept when we become beekeepers.
Yep. If we can keep beating this horse, but it's just not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be any happier. So let's just stop, because I suspect most of the listeners stopped about 20 minutes ago. This is a dead subject, seems like.
Let's wrap this. Let's put a bow on this. So if you think you have American Foulbrood, you have resources available. The Honeybee Health Coalition, Project AFSM, you have Bee Informed Partnership, you have local veterinarians who are available who can diagnose American Foulbrood and can treat that. They have the ability to provide medication, terramycin, essentially, for American Foulbrood. But get someone's help if you suspect you have American Foulbrood, because it is a nasty disease and you don't want it to spread. And ultimately, be prepared that you might have to lose the entire colony.
That's the proper bow. I can't add anything to that. Hey, thanks for slogging through this. Kim will be back. He'll appreciate your taking up the mantle for this particular difficult subject, but I'm glad it's done.
Yeah, well, next time, hopefully we can talk about unicorns and rainbows.
Okay. They're always in the bee yard. They're just not always readily visible.
That's right.
Bye, Jeff.
We'll see you.